Welcome to today's Museums from Your Home live stream presented by the University of Alabama Museums. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I am the Communication Specialist for UA Museums. And joining me today are Katherine Edge, Director of the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum, and Brandon Thompson, Director of the Gorgas House Museum. And Brandon, who is our guest today?
All right, today we are joined by a very special guest who can tell you all about the magic behind the curtain. So we're kind of going to lift the veil a little bit today. I have an amazing presentation. We are joined today by the UA Museum's Communication Specialist, Rebecca Johnson, who is going to tell us all about her position, kind of give us a little bit about her background. And I'm really interested to pick your brain about what it's been like these last, I don't know, 4 months or so, and kind of what your challenges are dealing with all of us, because I know I have requests almost every day, and I'm kind of curious to see what you have to say about managing that and kind of juggling all of our different areas and whatnot. So yeah, I want to lift the veil today and kind of talk about the magic behind the scenes.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's so much as a challenge because everybody is so wonderful to work with. So a challenge doesn't seem to be the good word for that. But before I get started, we are broadcasting live. So if you have any questions for anything that we're talking about, you can leave them in the comment section. And remember, this is live, so anything can happen. So bear with us in case we have any issues. But I guess I'll go ahead and get started and kind of tell you all a little bit about my background and how I got to UA Museums.
Well, you've survived nearly an entire year, Rebecca. So I'm hopeful that if we haven't scared you off by now, especially with everything going on with COVID, I don't know. I don't know what your threshold for pain is, but it must be pretty high because you've dealt with us. You've dealt with us for almost a year and dealt with us in the midst of COVID. So kudos to you. We love you, and everything that we do is all because of your involvement and your expertise. So thank you for everything that you do and have done. And yes, just please never leave us because I would flounder. I would absolutely flounder. That's no joke. I would flounder.
Well, the check is in the mail, so thank you for your kind words. But yeah, it's been very exciting. It's been almost a year so far.
Yeah, so like a week and a half away from a year on. Is that about right?
Pretty close. My first day was August 5th, 2019. So
August 5th.
Coming up. Yeah. So it's we've done a lot in a year. So kudos to everyone. So just a little bit about me before I met y'all. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. So if you know some of the suburbs in Birmingham, I'm from Vestavia Hills. That's where I grew up. And to my great shame, during those years, in my formative years, I was an Auburn University fan. I cheered for the Auburn Tigers in athletics. I thought at one point I was going to go to Auburn. And what changed for me was my senior year of high school. A couple of things happened that changed my trajectory completely from one end to the other to go to the University of Alabama was a couple of things. So I had visited Auburn and kind of experienced some of the campus and the town there. And I wasn't as impressed. I'll just say that a little as politely as I can. And I had been familiar with Tuscaloosa and the University of Alabama campus because I had gone to band camps in middle school and high school. And so I would stay at, a week in Tutwiler Hall, and I would stay a week in Rose Towers, RIP, never forget. So there were differences between the two campuses. I had also been interested in the communication school, and so that was really appealing to me at the University of Alabama because back then, I don't know where they rank currently, but back then when I was going to school, they were a top 10 communication school in the country. And they also had the on-campus TV station, WVUA, which is very unique. As far as I'm aware, it's only one of two campuses that have a student-run television station on campus. So that was very unique. So I was very interested in that. And I also, like I mentioned, I was in the band. I was in the marching band at my high school. I played clarinet. I was also a bassoonist in the symphonic bands. So I was interested in being part of a marching band when I went to college. So my senior year, I think it was like February. So it was kind of cutting it close to my change in trajectory of when I graduated in May. But in February, I went to the University of Alabama Honor Band. And during that weekend, they have a presentation of the different groups you can be a part of in the music area and the music school. So you have, you know, the Alabama Wind Ensemble and some of the smaller ensembles, and then they had the $1 Million Band. And I sat in Moody Music Building. If you've ever been to the concert hall, they have different levels of the concert hall. And so they would put $1 Million Band members all around those levels. And when they played Yay Alabama, it was amazing. And so even as an Auburn fan, I witnessed that and I was like, wow, this is a really good marching band. So those things coupled together made me change my mind about where I wanted to go to school. And so I ended up coming to the University of Alabama. I initially thought I might want to go into radio, but something happened, and I cannot even tell you what changed my mind. But I decided to get into the broadcast television production sequence, which is part of the telecommunications and film degree. They have different well, they did when I was in school. They had different sequences. So you had journalism and film and television production. And so I really enjoyed those classes. Those classes taught me how to direct, how to do floor managing, how to run an audio board, how to compose a shot, how to edit video. Back then we had linear editing. So there's two types of editing. There's linear and nonlinear. Nonlinear is what we're used to today. If you ever launch Adobe Premiere Pro, that's a nonlinear editing system, which is so much better than a linear editing system, which is a tape-to-tape edit. So if you screwed up in linear editing, you had to do a lot of work to get back and do it over. So it's nice now where you can just do a Command Z and undo it. So I got a little bit of a taste of both of those kinds of editing classes. So I learned a lot at UA, and a lot of those skills that I learned in college, I'm still applying to today, even with this live stream, how to switch shots and how to direct. So those were really valuable classes and valuable skills that I learned at UA. So here on the slide, you can see I am the $1 Million Band member here. So that was on Bryant Denny. I think looks a little different now today from those days back in the early 2000s. So that was quite the experience. We weren't as good in football there, so I didn't get to go and travel all around like they do now. They're very fortunate. Those $1 Million Band students, they get to go to a national championship almost every year. So it was a little different then. But I had a good experience in the band and some of those music things that I was a part of. I was in the Alabama Wind Ensemble, so I had a great experience there. And the picture on the bottom right is me getting to sort of tap into that radio stuff that I was interested in. One summer, I volunteered at the College of Communications doing a radio reading for the blind. So they had opportunities where you could come in for an hour and you would just read the newspaper for blind people in specific areas. So I had a specific newspaper that I would read. So that was a very interesting experience and something I always remember. So after, well, I guess in terms of my professional experience, my senior year of college, I worked at WVUA, which is the television station on campus. And I was a camera operator there. So I would go at night to do the 10 o'clock show. And that was great. I learned how to floor manage, learned about rundowns, did some teleprompter work. So they probably do it a little differently today, back in those old days. But that was a great experience, learning how to get into local news and how to run a live broadcast. So after that, though, when I graduated from college, I was an intern at AmSouth Bank, which is now Regions Bank in downtown Birmingham. I was an intern there, so that meant I did whatever they needed me to do, which often was involving being a production assistant or an assistant editor. So I got to go on video shoots. They would make a lot of corporate training videos for AmSouth. So mostly in-house things for their employees. So I got to go on shoots and see how they produced videos. I was even in one time. I had a little bit of dialogue. It was terrible. I was a bad actress. But that was a good experience to learn how they shot things out in the field. And I learned a lot of editing techniques and editing tricks there as well. So that was a really good experience. And after that, I got a job at WVTM in Birmingham, which I think they may call themselves Alabama's 13 now. Back then they were owned and operated by NBC 13. So it would have been NBC 13 then. But I was a video news editor, so I edited news stories that would go on the air. I was also an ingest operator. Back in the old days, how it would work is that you would take a physical tape. So if you think like a VHS tape, but it wasn't VHS, it was like a DVC Pro tape, so it was a different format. But you would actually take the tapes that had the video edited on them, and you would insert them into what, I guess for people who don't understand VTRs, they would be like VHS machines. So you put them in a deck, and then you would cue them up, and the director would hit play, and that's how the news would go on the air. So they probably don't do it that way anymore. But back then, that's one of my jobs that I had at WVTM, is that I was an ingest operator. So I would cue up the tapes, and it was a little bit difficult. You had to make sure you put them in the right order, in the right deck. That could have been a little tricky. And I also did a little bit of production on the weekends for them. I did a little teleprompter work. So that was a really good experience. It was very fast paced, very stressful sometimes. I remember seeing a movie with Joan Cusack one time where she worked in news, and she had to take one tape. She had to run down a hallway and take a tape from one end to the other to get it on the air. And that was my real life experience. I did a lot of running at WVTM to get tapes, to get tapes on the air. Sometimes that would be the case. So that is a real thing that does happen, or at least did happen when we worked with tape back then. So that was a lot of my experience in Birmingham. And I had a lot of great experiences that sort of built upon all of my skills that came before them. And while I was at WVTM, I got a call from Turner in Atlanta, and I had totally forgotten that while I was in school, I had applied for a position. They had a website back then called turnerjobs.com, and so you could apply for a job at Turner Broadcasting at that time. And so I'd forgotten that I'd done it. It was 2 years later, and they called me and offered me a chance to interview with them in Atlanta. And so I went over there, and I decided that I wanted to take a chance to go outside of Alabama and outside of what I knew, and take a chance to do something different. And so I'd always kind of wanted to work in the entertainment business at some level. And so this was my chance to work in a television, for a nationwide and international level. And so this was a great experience. I was there for 14 years. I started as what they call a tape operator. So I helped editors with anything they needed. I did a little bit of editing myself. And in that group, I don't want to get down into the nitty gritty just in case people get confused. But there's a group at Turner that edits all of the programming. So any of the movies or the TV shows you might see on TNT or TBS or Cartoon Network, all of those shows have to be edited a certain way in terms of time. If there's things that have to be censored or blurred, or if the credits have to be sped up in certain ways to fit the advertising that goes into them, that all has to be edited. So I was in that group. So I helped with them for about a year. And then a man named Ken Brady, he approached me to help out with a project of his, and it was a way to capture television programming and create digital files. So this was back before there was Netflix, before there was Hulu, before there was Amazon Prime, there was a time where you could not stream movies and TV shows on the internet. I know a lot of people can't even wrap their mind, even I can't wrap my mind around that now, that there was a time when that was not possible. But this was around the time when I think people were trying to figure that out. And so he asked me to help out with that project. And he had remembered me a little bit later and asked me to be part of a new group he was starting called the Digital Media Group. And so in that group, I worked with digital files, which meant I would take tapes and convert them into digital files like QuickTime files or MPEGs or whatever it was. So I learned a lot about video formats, frame rates, bit rates, codecs, all those kinds of things. So that was something that I became pretty good at, and that I liked doing. Got to do some really cool projects that now that I think about it were things that I was really fortunate to do. Like I got to watch a lot of TV, as what I tell people. There were projects where I would have to clip up an episode of a TV show to have, something that could go on the internet to, just little clips. So there was one project where I got to watch all of Married with Children. I got to watch Pee-wee's Playhouse. So it was it was a lot of fun. I also did what we call DVD and Blu-ray QC, and QC just means quality control. So I would basically watch a DVD or a Blu-ray and check that there were no errors, that all the navigation worked correctly, that there were no video tears, any audio hits, that the captioning was spelled correctly, all those kinds of things. So I got to watch a lot of cool things and a lot of fun programming. There was one day where I got to a couple of days where I got to QC some Impractical Jokers. So I highly recommend the Jokers. They're very funny. So there were some cool days that I got to do a lot of really neat things. And then I ended up my career at Turner in the new media operations group, which was a lot of the same things I was doing in the digital media group. But we did more in terms of what television people will call electronic sales through, EST. And what that involves is, so if you go to iTunes and you were to buy an episode of The Amazing World of Gumball or Robot Chicken, that group, New Media Operations, was the group that packaged those video files and that metadata that would tell you, the metadata would tell you what the title of the program was, the title of the episode, the runtime, the description of the episode, when it was released, that kind of, all that information that you see when you look at that. So that had to be packaged up and sent to those vendors like Amazon, Sony, Xbox, you name it, Hulu, everybody, iTunes, Apple. So we did a lot of that. We also did video on demand. So we would monitor those things and make sure everything got up and delivered to where it was supposed to go. So I touched pretty much everything that you could touch at Turner. It's now, I think, called Warner Media Group. If you ever work in the corporate world, names change a lot. Group names change, company names can change. So when I started, it was Turner Broadcasting, then it became Turner, then it became Warner Media Group. But I was able to touch everything. I worked for Cartoon Network, TBS, TNT, Adult Swim, True TV, TCM. I even did a lot of stuff with the TCM Cruise. That was a project I did most years. And CNN. So I got to touch a little bit of everything. And so this picture at the top there is me on my last day at Turner. I'm a big Fred Astaire fan, so it was fun to have that be one of the last things that I sort of documented myself with for Turner. And at the bottom, I'm there with Bubbles. Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls. So every now and then we would have cartoon characters who would visit us on campus. And just to clarify for people, if you don't know, I think a lot of people, when they hear about Turner, they think about the CNN building in downtown Atlanta near Centennial Park. That was not the building where I worked. That was more of the news headquarters. That's where they did a lot of the news. But what I was doing, I was in the entertainment side. So I worked at the Techwood campus, which is actually directly across the street from Georgia Tech. So if you're ever in Atlanta and you're driving on I-75 and you're around Georgia Tech, you might look over and see a big building that has a bunch of network logos on the side. That's the building I worked in for 14 years. So
how close were you to the varsity?
Pretty close. The thing about the varsity is, for me, I could only go there every now and then, because if I went to the varsity, I would eat too much. And a lot of it would be fried foods. And I would not feel so great afterwards, even though the food was really good. One time I went with a friend and we got onion rings and French fries and hot dogs and just everything. And it was not a great choice. That was not a great food decision that day. But yeah, we were pretty close to the varsity.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's down there.
Yeah, just looking for landmarks and that kind of thing. So, yeah. I've been there once or twice, so yeah, I think I know where you are.
Yeah, it's down in that area. If you ever find Georgia Tech, just look across the street and you'll see the building I was in. And the reason that there were so many reasons why I left Turner, but one of the biggest ones was my mom. So about a year and a half ago, maybe now, my mom had a pulmonary embolism, which is blood clots on your lung, and it was pretty serious. And for a couple of years before that, I had been looking to change jobs and try something else. And I kind of had this longing to come back to Alabama to be closer to my family. And that health event with my mom was kind of the clincher to that. I felt like I needed to come back to Alabama. And so that's why I started to look around for other positions and look for things in the Birmingham and Tuscaloosa area. And so that's how I came across the UA Museum's communications specialist position. I was looking at things maybe to see what my alma mater had to offer. I thought that would be kind of a fun job to go back and work for the University of Alabama. And my policy for looking at positions, future job options was always, do I think I can do this? Because if I don't think I can do this, I'm not going to apply for it. So there were a couple of things that stood out to me. What you're looking at on this slide is what I saw on the job position when I was looking at the job. So the things that stood out to me that I thought I could do were the generate video and educational content for online platforms. And I also, the bottom one where it said an interest or experience in science and or museum education or outreach, and knowledge and experience with videography preferred. So I'm not a scientist by trade, but I think science is fascinating. And I also have loved museums my whole life. And I've done a lot of video work on my own in my personal time. And I thought those were things I could do. The public relations thing, I knew I would probably have a little bit of a learning curve to get into that, because I'm not a PR person or a marketing person by trade either, but I did learn some things from my Turner experience, where I did work with marketing people in my job. So I thought maybe I could learn that at least. And so there were things in the job description that stood out to me that at least made me want to apply for the job. And I always tell people that the Turner experience, I think, really helped me to get the job of communication specialist. But I think more so what helped me to really nail it was what I was doing outside of my day job, what I was doing in my personal time, my free time. And so three things I think really helped me in this position. My entire time in Atlanta, I was a camera operator for my church's production team, Buckhead Church, which is there in Buckhead in Atlanta. And there I got to continue to keep up my camera operation skills, which I didn't get to do at Turner. That was not part of my job there, but at least twice a month, I would run cameras on tripods, or I would do what we called roaming cameras, which are cameras that were handheld that you could go on a stage or on the floor and sort of move them around. You weren't confined to one place. So I did both of those positions. And that helped me keep up my live production experience as well, to kind of keep those skills honed. So I had a lot of fun doing that. I also had started during my time in Atlanta, I'd started a personal YouTube channel of mine. Again, there was a day when YouTube did not exist. It's hard to think about now, but that sort of started to become a thing when I was in Atlanta. So I started a YouTube channel for myself. A lot of what I do is document trips. I do a lot of sort of documentary type style videos. I also dabbled in doing film analysis. One of my most popular series on my YouTube channel was one I did on one of my favorite films, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's one of my favorite films. And so I did a series on that. And to my great surprise, it was the most popular thing I'd ever done. The cinematography video that I did on that to talk about the cinematography in the movie has over 21,000 views on it, which is crazy to think about because I'm a nobody. So to have that kind of reach is pretty cool. So it's neat to see what you can do with YouTube. If you have an interest in doing that, YouTube is a great platform because you can put your work out there. So that's really cool. So also while I was in Atlanta, I experimented with podcasting. I'd sort of started diving into it about 2009. And then I had a few podcasts that started and failed. But I'd been doing a podcast called Supergirl Radio since 2015. This is one I'm really proud of because we do an episode pretty much every week. We're on a little bit of a break right now because so much is going on. But we do a podcast every week talking about the CW Supergirl TV series. We also talk about Supergirl comics and all of the animated stuff, Smallville, the Helen Slater film, you name it. Supergirl's been around since 1959, so there's plenty to talk about with the character. So that has taught me a lot about, how to run a podcast, how to record it, edit, publish, and promote it. So the podcasting experience has really helped me. So a lot of the things that happened to me, or that I chose to start in Atlanta, were things that were very new. When I was in Atlanta, YouTube started. Podcasting was not a thing until I was in Atlanta. So a lot of that, those things that became hobbies of mine that really benefited me to get this UA Museums job happened during my time in Atlanta. And one of the things I think has benefited me and helped me translate some of the things that I do with podcasting specifically to UA Museums is that Supergirl Radio, the podcast that I'm a co-host for, we are part of what's called a podcasting network. So sometimes podcasts that have similar topics or similar interests will get together and form a network, and that creates camaraderie. It helps get press badges at San Diego Comic-Con, things like that. So we joined a podcasting network, and when I was looking at the museums, it reminded me a lot about what we had been doing with the podcasting network, because there were individual museums that wanted to be branded as a unified front with UA Museums. And that was very similar to how all of our individual podcasts became a unified front under the DCTV Podcast Network. So when I looked at that, it stood out to me as something very similar to what I had been doing with my podcasting time. And so a lot of that that I've taken from DCTV Podcasts, I've tried to implement with UA Museums, try to use it as a way to help with that branding and help unify all the museums under one umbrella. So that's kind of what I tried to start doing when I first started. One of the things that I noticed is that we had a UA Museums Facebook page and we had a UA Museums Instagram account, but we didn't have a UA Museums Twitter account. So because the University of Alabama has such a big presence on Twitter, I thought that was important that we also have a UA Museums account on Twitter as well. So that's been growing a little bit, and it's a good way to put all of the museums into one thing. And so Twitter is surprising to me, because I thought that the college students would be on Twitter, but I quickly learned that Instagram is where they are. So that was a very surprising part of the social media experience with UA Museums. So Twitter is a different beast for sure. And so one of the things that I am tasked with is awareness, trying to get people to know what the museums are doing, when they're happening, what people can come and see. So I've been trying to figure out best practices for myself, learning about things that I do that don't work, learning about things that I do that do work. So I'm trying to always kind of reevaluate everything that we do to try to see how we can improve and where maybe the holes are in how we communicate things. So my hope for what we do, especially with video content, is that if people see what the museums do, it will encourage them to want to visit the museums. Because I know if I see some cool video about something that, I don't know, the Center for Puppetry Arts is doing, it makes me want to go visit the Center for Puppetry Arts. So that's something I try to keep in mind, because my personal experience at Alabama during my 4 years of college is that I never went inside the Gorgas House Museum. The only time I went into the Alabama Museum of Natural History was after I graduated, and some friends of mine had gotten married and they had their wedding reception in the Grand Gallery. That was the only time I'd gone in there. So my hope is that I can take my experience of learning more about these museums and experiencing them will translate into other people finding out more about the museum. So that, I'm very passionate about that. I don't want any other UA student to walk by the Gorgas House Museum and never go in it. That's one of my goals.
Me too.
Yeah. And so the great thing about the awareness thing is that I'm not alone in trying to figure out how to do that. The museum staff, you all have been really helpful, pointing out, like, we're doing this exhibit here. You can come and take some pictures and do some video during this tour. And that's really helpful for me to know kind of what you all are doing, because you know best about what you're planning and what things are going on. And my policy that I've really understood about myself is that I need to shoot, photograph, video everything that happens, because I never know when I'm going to be able to use it. For example, I shot some video for the Native American Festival back in October 2019, and I put together a little video, but I didn't use all of my footage just because some things don't quite work, for what you want to do, what story you want to tell. And so recently we did a Moundville Mondays video with a scout who was doing his Eagle Scout project out at Mound E. And he, in his interview, talked about the Native American Festival and getting to go there when he was a kid. And so I was able to take some of that unused footage from the Native American Festival and put it into his interview because it fit a little better there. So I'm glad that I overshoot sometimes, because it does help in other areas. So I'm always trying to learn about what people don't know or might not know about UA museums and our museum units, to see what we can do to help people know more about them. Like when I first started, I didn't know you could camp at Moundville. I really wish I had known that in college. I would have gone out to Moundville all the time. So I'm always trying to figure out what we can tell people that they might not know about the museums. So I think we're trying to do a little bit of that. And I'm also constantly trying to look at what other museums and institutions are trying to do. I look a lot at the Field Museum, especially, but also some of the other museums that I personally have been to and keep in touch with. And a lot of things they've done are interviews and live streaming, behind the scenes stuff, and everything that I've seen out of some of these institutions is everything is education focused and education based. So I think we're actually doing a pretty good job. Those are some of my goals when I first started. And we've started to really implement a lot of these things. And I think in that regard, we're doing a really good job. So I've been really proud of everyone for getting behind those ideas and trying some new things. So I really appreciate y'all for getting on board.
Not a problem.
And so a lot of my job is dealing with social media. I manage all of the social media accounts in addition to everyone else. I mean, everybody who runs the museums has access to those accounts as well. But I help with posting content for the pages, and I'm a visual person, so I hopefully like to put out visually striking images that it will get people's attention. And so, for example, at the Native American Festival, I took this picture of this little judgy owl who looked like he was mad at everyone there. And so that was something I posted to the Moundville Archaeological Park Facebook page, and it got 33 Facebook shares at the time that I created this presentation. I don't know if more people have shared it, but that was encouraging to me, because for me, I care more about shares than I do likes, because that means people are sharing it out to their friends and their families. So that's how we get the word out, is if people share things. So the little judgy owl got people to see more about Moundville and what they do at the Native American Festival. In terms of social media, I'm a big believer in tagging other accounts. To me, that's like free PR. If you tag someone, they get a notification of your post. So it tells people, hey, this is what we're doing today. So I tag a lot of school groups, parent groups, news outlets in Tuscaloosa and Alabama, local businesses in the surrounding Tuscaloosa area, because I want people in Tuscaloosa to know, especially what y'all do. I hit up tourism groups and any kind of related field that might be interested in what we're doing. I try to tag them in some of our posts if possible. I also have discovered that a little trick, if you are interested in how to grow social media accounts, one of the tricks I found that has been successful for us is following other accounts that might be interested in what we're doing. So I've followed a lot of Tuscaloosa businesses so that they will be able to see us and then possibly follow us back, and maybe they'll keep in touch with what we do. So that's been a good thing that has been proven to be successful. And I'm a big believer in hashtags, maybe not so much on Facebook, because Facebook sometimes hashtags are not as popular, although I think Facebook is trying to make hashtags more of a thing for that platform now. But on Twitter and Instagram for sure. I think those are really important. So I encourage people to use hashtags because I think they do help. So that's kind of my social media approach to things. But a lot of what I've been doing in addition to social media is, of course, I do a lot of shooting and editing videos. I have a lot of fun doing that. I find that very creatively rewarding. And so that's been a lot of fun for me to tap into my more creative side. At Turner, I was working on other people's content. So this time I get to create content. So that's been really cool. I help out with website management. Recently, I've been working with Research and Collections to update their website and add more to it. If you go to the page now, you'll see new information on Paint Rock and Harrell Station and some of the news things that they've been engaged in. So that's been really cool. I also noticed that when I first got to UA Museums, we didn't have a way for UA Museums for UA students to become a student member by signing up online. The only way people could really sign up to become a student member was either at Get On Board Day or at some sort of student function. So I thought it might be beneficial for us to have an online form for them. So if they're sitting in their dorm room, they could have something where they clicked a couple of things and then they joined and became a student member and got added to our email list. So that was actually really successful. We had a lot of students sign up that way. And so I thought that was a good idea that we implemented when I started. I also joined the UA Communicators Network. So the communication specialist position is something that all of the colleges have on campus. So each college has a communication specialist that helps with getting out information about what they're doing. So I'm just one of many communication specialists on campus, although I think what I do with the museums is a little bit different. But it's been great and valuable to meet other communication specialists to learn about what works for them and what doesn't. And so I've been able to trade information that way. And Trending Tide is a Facebook group that they started so that it opens up more conversation other than the once a month meetings that we have had. And I'm also trying to just, try to apply what I did in television for 14 years and see if I can translate that somehow into what we do at UA Museums. I've also been helping out with the branding. When I got here, excuse me, I need to readjust my headset. When I got here, there was no logo for the Research and Collections group, and they wanted one, and I think they deserved one. So we worked with strategic communications with the University of Alabama in helping get that approved and get that going for them. So the Office of Archaeological Research is also another part of UA Museums that does not have an approved logo from the University of Alabama. So they are next in line. We're currently in the process of getting them a cool logo that they're proud of, that they can put on all of their things. So that's been good. That has forwarded, I think, the UA Museum's goals and part of the plan and what y'all wanted to accomplish. So I'm glad that we were able to make that happen. Like I said, I created a UA Museum's Twitter account to get us a presence on Twitter. I've been proud that we've been able to bring some accounts that have been dormant for a little bit, and we've brought them back to life, and we're able to breathe a little bit of content into those things so people know that those accounts are active and that they can follow them for anything they post if they're interested in it. So I think that's really important. And so Discovering Alabama is one of those units of UA Museums that I think I would like to treat a little differently. And so I'm still kind of trying to figure out how we can do that because it's a television program. And so from my television background, I think it should be handled a certain way. And I would really like to brag on Discovering Alabama and make that really come alive as a TV program that gets promoted, as a TV program should. So I'm hoping to do more for Discovering Alabama in the coming year. I also helped design and publish the Museum Chronicle that comes out for UA Museums. Let's see if I can get this to come up. This was my first time publishing a magazine, so I learned how to do that this year, which was exciting. But this was really helpful. All the museum staff were involved in writing articles and looking it over. And so we put out a Museum Chronicle that you can download on museums.ua.edu if you'd like to read it. It has some really good stuff in here. Brandon wrote a really nice article about the Gorgas House Museum, and it highlights Ed Wilson, who is a genuine University of Alabama legend. He is where legends are made. So it's a really cool article about him as well. So definitely go check out the Museum Chronicle. Katherine and Brandon will probably have a meeting soon about the next one. We'll have to set something up about that. So be thinking about what articles you would like to see in the next Chronicle. And also during my time here, I created the UA Museum's YouTube channel, and we've been able to create so much content with the pre-recorded stuff that we've done, and also live streams like this have really helped grow that YouTube channel. And so I'm really proud of that, and I look forward to putting more content on that. So if you want to see what we've been doing over the past year, go to youtube.com/UA Museums and subscribe to our channel. And so I guess that's the end of my spiel, just to kind of give you a background of where I came from, and what I've been hoping to do with UA Museums, and help continue to bring awareness to what you guys do, because I just want to brag on the UA Museum staff. They're some of the hardest working people I know that I've ever worked with, and they're open to new ideas, which I think is really awesome, and being able to kind of change with the way, the times, in the ways that, you promote things now.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Again, we couldn't do it without you. So, we do have a couple of questions. We've got one from Ronald Howard. He asked, you mentioned just a second ago about how you work with, what your plans are, long-term plans are for Discovering Alabama. But Ronald wants to know, do you do any work with Doug Phillips and Discovering Alabama, or is that a totally separate operation at UA Museums?
Yeah, no, I've had meetings with Doug, and we've tried to figure out positive ways to really impact them and what they're doing, and I'm hoping to do a lot more for them in the coming year. And Doug's a good guy, and we've had good conversations, and so I think I think what they do is awesome at Discovering Alabama. They've been doing it for a long time, and they put out a lot of great programming that tells a lot of, and sort of brags on the state of Alabama, which I think is awesome. So I hope to do more with Doug, but we had a really successful event for them when they promoted their Tuscaloosa episode. I guess that was back in October. We had a big event at the Bryant Conference Center, and so that was a good turnout for them, and I was really happy about that. So hope to do more with that, and with some upcoming episodes that they've got going on. They've got a fossils episode I know they're working on, so that'll be really cool. And so just stay tuned with Discovering Alabama. I've got I have so many big dreams and ideas for them. So we'll hope to implement those in the coming year.
And Ron had another question as well. He says, you spoke of different social media platforms UA Museums are involved with. He asked, what about TikTok in view of the controversy of it being controlled by China?
Yeah, that is something people have been talking about. TikTok, I think there is a conversation to be had about trying to do things with TikTok. I know Dr. John Friel, who's the director of the Alabama Museum of Natural History, he has shown examples of, I forget what her full name is. I think her first name is Jada. She shares science facts about different animals on TikTok, and they're really funny and they're fast paced, and it's a good way to digest a lot of information very quickly. So I think there is an educational benefit to TikTok if used in a creative, fun way. So we could explore that. The being controlled by China, I can see the concern there. There is a valid concern. Sometimes I wonder if TikTok is going to just end up being a fad, and then go away. Some platforms sort of come and go, MySpace, Vine, things like that, where they're hot for a little while, and then people kind of get tired of it and they go away, and they kind of go back to things that are something they use all the time. TikTok takes a lot more effort. TikTok takes planning and what you want to do in terms of video and getting it done the right way. I mean, I think her name is Jada, who does those animal videos. She obviously takes the time to research all of that and does a really good job of presenting it. So it's not something you can just hop on and do sloppily. You have to really do it well for it to be something that people want to watch. So we've had conversations about TikTok, but we haven't really explored it as much.
Yeah, I have several students, as many as 8 to 10 at a time, and I'm going to call one of them out, and only one of them uses TikTok, and it's mainly for like dance videos.
Yeah.
And I've actually seen her dance a little bit in the side. Sorry, Adrian, to call you out. But yeah, all the students we have in there, only one really uses TikTok, but the possibility is there to do more, but yeah, just have to explore it a bit more to see if we want to use it or not.
That's been my experience as well with TikTok, is that a lot of the really great, awesome videos are dance videos. I have some friends who do that, and some of the, like, I have a favorite comedian, Angela Johnson. She's done some great dance videos on TikTok. So that's kind of what I look at TikTok for, is the dance videos, because I'm not a dancer. Okay. So I'm really impressed by people who can dance well. But yeah, it's interesting trying to figure out where the students are, I think is, especially when we want to target the University of Alabama students, just trying to figure out how they consume information. And I have noticed that Instagram is where they are, and where a lot of the activity is. So trying to do more with Instagram is a goal as well.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if we need to come up with some type of museums dance squad and try and get all of our students involved with it. And yeah, we'll come up with a museum shuffle or museum mappa. I'm trying to think of something alliterative to use and put that out there. But yeah, I'll talk to the students when they get back. See what we can do.
I think there are conversations to be had. I think some of the educational things that we could probably approach, education about the history of campus or history of the museums somehow in there somewhere. So I think that would be really fun to at least brainstorm about. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you what it's like to run a podcast, because my students have been pushing really hard for this within the 2 years I've been there. But Native American dances on TikTok. I don't know how to talk.
We'd have to talk to Moundville about it, but maybe it could be something we could implement for Moundville.
Yeah, talk to Lindsay.
I do think we absolutely need to organize some kind of museum staff flash mob, because that would just be.
I don't know if I could groan any harder right now.
Museum staff flash mob.
Just on the Middle Woods Quad. Just start that up. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You pitch it at our next leadership meeting. See what Bill has to say about it. Bill would probably go for it, actually.
I think it would get attention for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I just want to pick your brain, ask you a little bit, what is it like to run a podcast? Because, the Gorgas students have been asking about this for like the last year and a half, and they really started to push hard for it the last several months, just because that's one way we consume information and really, go forward in our educational efforts. And that's something they're really pushing hard for. It's something we like to explore. So what is it like to run a podcast? I know that's a pretty broad question with lots of answers, but what can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
What I think people don't understand about podcasting is that really good podcasts are a lot of work. It does take a lot of time in terms of, I'm a big believer in preparation. Some people, I've listened to podcasts where they just hop on the mic and just talk about whatever comes to the top of their heads. And usually, unless you're a really good extemporaneous speaker, that podcast is not going to be any good because you don't have a plan for it. You don't have a format or an outline that's going to be structured. So for me, I'm a big believer in preparation. I get joked on a lot about my Google Docs that I have. I operate exclusively out of Google Docs because it becomes a bit of a search engine for me, which is nice. I can go back and find something from 5 years ago that we talked about just by putting in some search terms into my Google Docs. But I think preparation is really important, knowing what you want to talk about before you even turn the computer on or turn your mic on, and having some sort of format, I think is really important. And I guess the basic that I think the content is where it starts. So you can always get good equipment and a lot of equipment now is pretty affordable and manageable. There's a lot of USB microphones. The one I'm using right now is just plugged into my laptop via USB, and I bought it in 2011 and I'm still using it today. So it's it's been a very good investment for me. So the equipment, I think, to me, is a little bit secondary, but I would just recommend that people go in with a plan of what you want to talk about and have an idea of what you want your podcast to be. Do you want it to be a comedy podcast? Do you want it to be informational? Do you want it to be conversational? Do you want to have a co-host? That kind of thing. So I think knowing kind of what you want to do with it, I think is the key to any kind of podcasting situation.
It's fun to envision this, talking to the students about it and maybe doing some type of collaboration with, the College of Communication and kind of create this podcast experience, like done within the theme of history, or providing like our spaces to do it, but really letting students talk about, what history means to them and in the spaces that we provide. And so I see that happening, and it's something I really like to explore. And without you, I couldn't even have this conversation to begin with. But yeah, I think it's something we can definitely explore and something we can definitely offer. Not only to the students, but also the campus community. So I think it'd be a fun thing and a worthwhile thing to really pursue. So yeah, I got a lot more questions for you, maybe off live stream. But yeah, I think something we can definitely.
I think that's a great idea, and I'm sure y'all have noticed being on campus when I walk around, at least when students were there. Just like me, I'm just as bad about this as I am, but. Earbuds are in, everybody's looking at their phones. And so I imagine that a lot of people are listening to podcasts when they walk to class and consuming some of that media. It's a pretty popular form of communicating things now. And people, I know I listen to them when I drive in my car or when I go run. You should see how many podcasts I listen to and how many I'm backed up on. I have like 50, 60 episodes and I need to listen to some of them just because they get backed up. But yeah, I think that's something very doable that we can do with the students. And I think it would be cool to hear their voices and their perspectives on some of those topics. I definitely think we should pursue that.
All right. Yeah, let's do it. I'm all right. Committing to it. Going to put that on the agenda list to make that happen. So, okay. So what are your top 3 podcasts?
Oh my gosh.
Got to pick 3.
I have Super Cool Radio is number 1.
Yes. I actually am a fan of it. That sounds biased. There's a podcast that I like. It's probably not for everybody, but it's called No Agenda, which is it's sort of a news analysis breakdown podcast. It's hosted by, this might be dating myself, but back in the early days of MTV, there was a VJ named Adam Curry. He had long, flowy hair.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's him and this other guy, John C. Dvorak, and they sort of break down the news of the day. And so they'll bring clips that they heard. And so they analyze what they hear. And what I think is really fun about that podcast is that Adam Curry, of course, he has a VJ background and he's very good with the technological side of things, but they have like sound effects that they have created based on those news items. And so they can incorporate the sound effects and those things with what they're talking about. So I think it's a lot of fun to listen to. Sometimes it's like 2-3 hours long, but it goes by so quickly because it's so entertaining. And the thing that I've tried to implement from listening to No Agenda is that it's a lot of listener-based content. So they call their listeners producers. So the producers can donate money to the podcast to help the podcast go. Because what a lot of people don't understand about podcasting is it can be something that you have to pay for. Sometimes you can do it for free, but if you really want to do it well, you got to put a little money towards it every month. Very affordable, but it's not exactly free. But they have producers that listen in and contribute not only monetary wise, but they also have people who create sound effects and create little end of show songs and things like that. So I think that's really cool that they've invited their listeners to be a part of the creation experience. And so No Agenda is probably one of my favorites. I'm trying to think what else. Let me look at my podcast app really quickly, see if any names stand out to me. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There's also a podcast I really love called Man of Steel Answers Insight Commentary, which is a very long name. I'm a big fan of the Zack Snyder films, as I mentioned, the Batman v Superman sort of genre of films. And the guy who does it, his online name is Dr. Awkward. And he, I think, is a lawyer by trade, but he does the podcast. He does the podcast himself, and he really approaches the content in a very methodical way. And so he takes the content of the films and then looks at it from all kinds of different angles with psychology and things like that. So it's an interesting podcast that I learn a lot from quite frequently. So those are probably two of my favorites. I'm all the time like looking for new podcasts. Like I want to get into, there's one called Back to the Future, the podcast. So I want to learn more about Back to the Future. I have so many. There's the Bible Project. It has been something that's been on my list to listen to. I just recently got into one called I think Wind of Change. I think I mentioned in another live stream that we did, which is a sort of a conspiracy theory sort of podcast where they think the Scorpion song Wind of Change was written by the CIA. So right. I like those kinds of podcasts where you hear a little bit of a story that you might not hear otherwise, only through the genre of podcasting.
We have another question from Ronald. He says a radio station you can listen to on your radio when coming into Tuscaloosa on your car radio has had stuff on UA activities, and he asks, "Are you involved with getting UA museum events on this radio station?"
Oh, that's interesting. I was not aware of that. I'll have to look into that. Do y'all know what radio station he's talking about? I know about the campus radio station, 90.7.
Yeah, 90.7 is the only one I'm aware of.
Yeah, not
Ron, Ron, if you know the FM or AM destination for it, type that in there for us, and we'll look that up.
Yeah, that would definitely be something we want to utilize. There are lots of things that I would like to do once we sort of, if whenever we reopen and have the ability to do more advertising. I would like to explore a lot of different options, but that would definitely be something we can look into.
All right, so yeah, we're kind of coming down to time, but I have at least one more question I want to ask.
Okay.
So what are the most fun moments for some of the work you've worked on? Which ones really stand out? And this can be UA museum specific or even pre-UA museums back over in Atlanta. So what are like some of the more fun moments that stick out to you?
Well, I think there was one project back before we closed during COVID-19. We worked on something called Color Our Collections, which is something that Research and Collections was doing with the Fashion Archive, where they created a coloring book of some of the objects in our collections. And it was a good way to get people to learn about our collections. And so the idea was pitched to me that we would go around and shoot video of people coloring the pages, students, museum staff, things like that. And so that was a really cool project. I think ended up being a good way to show off the collections. And I do have a little bit of video of Katherine drawing something that we shot at the Transportation Museum. So we shot a bunch of little short videos like that. It was a time-lapse video, so you could see it very quickly and see her finished product and what it took to draw the page. So we did a lot of things like that. So you can find those on our YouTube channel if you want to go check more about that. I've also enjoyed during the pandemic. Unfortunately, we've had to close the museums, but we were still able to provide educational content for the public. And one of the things we started doing were called isolation observations. And so it started with Mary Beth Ronzinski, and then we sort of opened it up to other museum staff. And so that's been really fun. I've learned a lot about nature in my own neighborhood, learned a lot about geese. And so so that's been a really fun way. And I think people have really enjoyed them. We'll probably have to bring them back at some point when we're less busy to do more of that. But I've got a little video of Brandon teaching us about box turtles if you want to watch that.
Hi everybody, doing some yard work today and came across these two common box turtles. According to iNaturalist, there are 6 subspecies of this one species. These two are probably eastern box turtles because we are east of the Mississippi River. They live a long time in captivity, up to 100 years, quite a bit less than that though in the wild due to predation and disease. These two are probably a mating pair, so I'm going to leave them alone, but these are one of the more common species that you can find in Alabama.
Yeah, so that's been really fun.
That was one of the most diplomatic ways I've ever heard anybody address
mating pair.
Yes, very diplomatic.
I'm weed eating the yard. I'm like, okay, let me make sure I know what I'm talking about. So it's a quick iNaturalist search and Wikipedia search. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna shoot this real quick. I'm gonna narrate it and give it right to Rebecca. But yeah, those have been a lot of fun. That's been a lot of fun series. I've got a couple waiting. So yeah, just whenever you're ready, I'll give them to you. But that's been a lot of fun to do.
I actually have a video in the wings as well. It will take some editing, but yes, I actually have one. That I could submit to. So
yeah, I've got a couple too. Just walking around the neighborhood, I'll spot something like some sort of slug, walking or crawling around on the pavement. So it's just kind of it's opened my eyes to the nature around me to look out for those things. So I think that's been a really fun project that we've done. And recently, I mentioned the Eagle Scout who's doing the project out at Moundville. At Mound E. What's really cool about this, and I'll show a very short clip of it, is that after we posted it this past Monday, the Boy Scouts of America official accounts have asked if they could share it. So I think that's, to me, that's a positive sign that other people outside of Alabama are noticing some of the things that we're doing, and hopefully we'll get that shared out and get some more exposure for places like Moundville. So I'll just show a quick little clip.
It's just so cool being out here and seeing all these mounds in person and seeing just how huge these are and thinking, wow, we're out here clearing this with chainsaws, steel tools. They did this with stone tools and hatchets and made these huge structures, which is just completely blows your mind. After you come out here and start doing work and just comparing it, I'm like, I have no clue how they managed to do all of this. There's a lot more service opportunities here at Moundville. My project's just one of many projects that could happen out here. I just really encourage and hope that people come out here and help the mounds and help give back to their communities or local parks.
Yeah, so that's part of our Moundville Monday series that, again, it was something that Lindsay Gordon came to me a couple of months ago and said, hey, I have this idea for something that I want to start doing. And so we took that idea and ran with it. I think it's been a really fun way to explore the different aspects of Moundville that you wouldn't get if you just went to the park. But I think it also encourages people to go to the park because we were able to show it off and see what's really cool about it. So shout out to Strategic Communications and their new drone footage that they shot for us recently. It was really beautiful. So it really showcases the beauty of the park. And it always, even when I'm editing, I'm like, I want to go back out to Moundville soon. So I hope people enjoy that.
Okay, I think we're right at time. Rebecca, is there anything you want to add before we start closing out?
Just that I'm really, proud of what we've able to accomplish in a year. And I really thank all of the museum staff for helping me and letting me ask dumb questions about things that I don't know. I've learned a lot about the city of Tuscaloosa and the university. And there are things that I hope that we can do to make sure that other people learn about Tuscaloosa and the University of Alabama. And hopefully we'll sort of make some noise with the things that we do. And so people outside of the state of Alabama will see it as well. So I'm just really proud of what we've been able to accomplish in a year. And that's a lot of thanks to the people who work with UA Museums for being willing to explore new things.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Rebecca. We appreciate it. Thanks for everything. We couldn't have done these last few months, like any of us, without you or your expertise. So I don't know how many times and ways I can say thank you, but thank you. And I'm really looking forward to the future and what all you're working on and how we continue to expand our offerings and our educational content. So thanks a lot.
Well, I'm just glad I can do something to help out because I think what the UA Museums do is amazing. And if I didn't work for UA Museums, I'd still go to UA Museums. So I'm glad to be able to be a part of it. So I guess that's going to do it for this Museums from Your Home live stream. We've changed our live stream schedule a little bit for some summer events that we've got going on. One that's going on right now is Bama Bugfest on the web. So if you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to do so. It's been a lot of fun for us to put together. You can go to bamabugfest.org and check out all the things that we've done. All the videos and the live streams that we've done have been archived there, so you can just go and click on the hyperlinks and go view those topics. We've covered a lot of buggy things, so I highly recommend it. And a good way to keep up with all of our live streams and events that we're doing on the web is, like we talked about, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/UAmuseums. That's a good way to keep in touch with what we're doing. I also would encourage you, if you want to become a supporting member of the museums, if you like what the museums do, you can go to give.ua.edu/museums and become a supporting member there. And as always, for Museums from Your Home content, you can go to museums.ua.edu/museums from your home, and you can see everything we've been doing with that initiative since the pandemic started. All right. Well, thank you to Katherine and Brandon for wanting to talk to me today. I don't get a lot of chances to talk about some of my experience, so I appreciate you giving me the platform to do that today. And thanks to everybody who was watching and who will watch this later for visiting UA Museums from your home.